Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we talk about high-value hi-fi, home theater, and headphone equipment. And today, we're talking about the Buchardt. Are these speakers worth $2,000? I don't know. Sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the Buchardt. So these beauties come in at 2,000 euros. Depending upon the exchange rate, it's going to be more or less than that in your currency. It comes with a 6-inch paper cone woofer, a huge passive radiator, and a 3/4 inch or 0.74 inch tweeter with an aluminum waveguide. Waveguide's a little bit rough. Texture on the waveguide, a little bit rough. They're a handsome speaker. They come in white and black, painted, or you can get them in 3 different kind of veneers. You can get rosewood, walnut, and light oak. And it's not really that much more expensive to get them veneered, which is kind of cool. A lot of options with these. These have a nominal impedance of 4 ohms. Which means you better check your amplifier or your receiver and make sure, if you're looking at these, that they can drive a 4 ohm load, because the sensitivity is 88, which is not super efficient. It's not super low, but it's not super efficient. If you have probably north of 50 watts into 4 ohms, I think you're going to be fine. These can punch really hard, and that takes up a lot of power. Bass hits take up a lot of power. So I would probably make sure you got a little bit of juice on tap if you're looking at the Buchardt S400 Mark II. Reported frequency response of 33, which is very low for a bookshelf speaker, all the way up to 40,000 hertz. We'll talk about it in the bass section, but 33 is an accurate specification. This thing also has a bunch of fancy crossover components in it. So it's got, if you're into the DIY community and you're into switching out crossovers, you're going to be really happy, because this has MyFlex stuff and really expensive other stuff and other stuff that's expensive. So it's got all the good stuff. If you're looking at buying a very expensive crossover, you don't need to, because these already have it in there. Comes with some magnetic grills, and the magnets are going to adhere to the hardware here on the drivers. I'm not crazy about them. I just think they look weird when the grills are on. I don't think they look. This is a beautiful speaker. I just think it looks strange when it has the grills on. I kind of wish it would have had just one grill that goes over it. That's going to be up to you, whether you like it or not. As it is, though, I like to see these things without the grills on. Quite pretty. There's an aluminum plate here on the back. Very nice binding post. This is a very solidly built speaker. So I think it's about 7 inches wide on the baffle, about 14 inches tall, and about 11 inches deep. It lays back at an angle. Okay, so this is not a rectangle. It does have a bit of a lean back to it. People talk about time alignment and things like that. Is that what it's for? I don't know, but it looks cool. And they sound pretty good. So whatever they're doing, whatever design choices they're making, are working. For electronics, I ran these with the Denafreps Aries as a DAC, the Weem Mini Streamer as my streamer, which is like $80 streamer, but it's going to the Denafreps, which is an expensive DAC, into the C15 preamp by Macintosh, into the 7270 power amp by Macintosh. Tons of power. I also ran these off of, well, surprise, surprise, the Buchardt i150 integrated amplifier. A lot different sound between the Mac and the Buchardt. I just did a review on the Buchardt integrated amplifier, so if you want to check that out, I'll put it right here. Click on over and take a look at that. Both those amplifiers, of course, drove the Buchardts wonderfully. A little bit different sonically between the Buchardt and the Macintosh. Buchardt, more revealing, also has a heck of a lot more options. Mac, it's like a leather baseball bat. I don't know any other way to describe it. Let's talk about Soundstage and Imaging. Okay, Soundstage Imaging. In this room, actually, I get better soundstage and imaging when I have the speakers closer to the wall. Doesn't make any sense, I know, but this room is a little bit weird. I have these right now about a foot from the wall. I have tried these all the way out about 3 feet from the wall, and it's okay. Soundstage and imaging is okay. The irony is they like to be closer to the wall. Miles Davis, So What, off of Kind of Blue. Percussion to the right, bass to the left. The soundstage was layered from a depth perception and separated out really well. Very good. How about some Tool? Okay, seamless. Chocolate chip trip, never jumped from speaker to speaker. Seamless. Traveled outside and even gave me the impression of being directly to the side, if not just a little bit behind. Soundstage imaging, quite good. And it makes sense, right? It's got a very large waveguide on the tweeter. Probably as good as I've heard. Let's talk about some bass. Same track, Chocolate Chip Trip. I don't think it's any secret that these speakers punch pretty hard. The thing about speakers that punch hard is they're not always neutral on the bottom end and oftentimes bumped on the bottom end. Well, I think there's a lot of bass presence here. I don't necessarily think that it is bumped at the expense of other frequencies in the response. While it's hefty and punchy, I still think it's flat enough that I'm not losing anything with the bass here. Bass is also creamy, right? And I know that doesn't make any sense. On the bass drum, kick drum, whatever you want to call it, on Chocolate Chip Trip, it was a thwack, palpable. While not like hitting you in the chest as far as like just that huge bass amount, now they will give you that if you turn them up high enough. It's the flavor of the bass. It's just thick like leather, like a thick leather briefcase. Like, thwack! Not like one of the, not like a Wall Street type, like a cowboy type. Whap! Okay, intergalactic. In a smaller room, you're going to get a large amount of bass. The weird thing about this speaker, and this is more about my room, is upstairs where I'm at right now, I don't get as much bass as I do downstairs in a larger room, which is strange. I think it has to do with the consistency of the sidewalls and things like that. In a consistent room, bass extension is as good as you're gonna get on a bookshelf speaker, at least one that I've heard. With the exception of maybe the ELAC Unify reference and the Q Acoustics 3030i, but these go deep. And they hit hard. They seem quick, with Miles Davis tonally realistic with the stand-up bass. Bass is very impressive. Let's talk about Midrange. So she just said everything. You know, there's a little bit of magic to this speaker in the Midrange because it seems warm yet detailed and clean at the same time. And I don't necessarily think I've heard that. Simultaneously, you have a smoothness, but you still hear deep into the music. The vibrato in her voice was apparent and there and clean, but there was no thinness to it at all. So her voice has weight and heft and presence, but it also has a lot of detail. Has as much detail as I've heard out of an AMT tweeter, titanium dome, or anything like that. Pretty good. Real good. Listen to some Mumford & Sons. Okay, I got distracted. I saw King of Pain, Alanis Morissette, jump up. So I had to listen to it. Acoustic guitars, clean, clear, weighty. It's the little bit of reverb that I'm getting. And that's really more to do with probably the treble and the air at the top. But the strings, anything that's being plucked, hanging out, and is more apparent than most speakers. Her voice, again, weighty, clean, fuller, but yet still as detailed as what I would think a speaker that is more emphasized on the top end of the mid-range. Also noteworthy is that this track, King of Pain, the Alanis Morissette cover off of MTV Unplugged, can be very sibilant because it was recorded sibilant. These speakers did not over-exaggerate that sibilance. So that would tell me these speakers are not sibilant at all. Now, Mumford & Sons. Alright, sorry, I got distracted. I keep thinking I'm going to go to one track and I see another track and I play it. So that was Santa Monica by Everclear. It was the re-recorded version. So not even a remaster, they just re-recorded it. And it's better than the original. The electric guitars are so clear and in the room experience that I just kept listening to the song. Because this has been one of my favorite songs. I've been playing it a lot lately. And I've never heard it as clean, crystal, and in the room as I just did on the Bucharts. Mid-range is very good. I think I'm going to keep saying the same things the more tracks I play, so it doesn't matter. Let's move on. Let's talk about treble. Okay, Centerman, the hi-hat is the impact of the stick to the hi-hat. Perfect. Completely 100% accurate. As accurate as if I would go back there and take a stick and hit the hi-hat. The amount of treble is not as high as I've heard on other speakers. Now, I'm not saying these are rolled off at all. I just don't hear as much. I hear the stick hitting, but I don't hear the afterwards as much as other speakers. Still accurate, still very pleasing, just not quite as airy as I've heard on other speakers. Wow. Okay, so that was Scentless Apprentice by Nirvana off the, I almost said MTV, it's off the In Utero album. I'm getting distracted because I'm trying to listen for treble, but I keep listening to other tracks and just getting sucked in because of the mid-range and the bottom end. Not to say that the top end isn't good. It is just not this speaker's standout characteristic. It's there. You know, I don't really feel like I'm missing anything, but in direct comparison to other speakers, there is a little bit less air on the Buchardt S400 Mark II. But I don't care. Okay, Harvester of Sorrow. Same thing here. The treble is not as apparent, or the cymbals are not as apparent, as in your face, or as hard as on other speakers. Treble here, clear, not the star of the show. As you bring the volume up, more of it comes in, similar to the ELAC debut reference, ELAC debut first generation. As you bring up the volume, some more of that treble comes in. But it is not going to be treble overload, especially at lower volumes. What are my final thoughts? This is a bass lover and mid-range lover's delight. This thing is very punchy, creamy on the bottom end, accurate on the bottom end. You're going to hear things in lower frequencies, bass, male vocals on the bottom end, stringed instruments on the bottom end, stringed instruments really in the mid-range as well. So guitar, electric guitars. You're going to hear stuff that you haven't heard before, even on whatever electronics you have. Same electronics, you're going to hear more stuff. You're going to be surprised about how much bass is coming out of these things, and not bass at the expense of mid-range clarity, not bass at the expense of linear roll-off. It's an exciting speaker from the standpoint of how well behaved it is, but how hard it's punching at the same time. Mid-range is sublime. Perfect combination of clarity and warmth. This is not an analytical speaker. This is not a thin speaker. This is not a cool speaker in the mid-range. This is not a forward speaker in the mid-range. But it's a wonderful speaker in the mid-range. With a bit of tone controls on the top end, you can get this speaker sounding as exciting as a lot of other speakers that may have a U-shaped or V-shaped frequency response, but it's still going to maintain the magic that is in the mid-range and the bottom end. These are fantastic. They remind me a bit of the Wharfdale Lintons, except with more punch. They also remind me of the ELAC debut reference, but with a better mid-range clarity, I guess. effortless mid-range on this, effortless bass on this as well. At around $2,000 though, is it worth it? I'm going to be doing a comparison with the ELAC Unify reference as well as the Golden Ear BRX speakers. Debut reference is $1,200, Golden Ear is around $1,600. So the Bucharts are going to be the priciest of that comparison. But that's going to give me a better idea of what their real value is. As of right now, I think these definitely are one of the best speakers I've heard. Whether or not that's worth $2,000 or around $2,000 is up to you. They do use very good crossover components. Does that make a huge difference compared to a speaker that doesn't use those components? I don't know. I would imagine it does, especially in the bass, because I'm hearing things in the bass and I'm hearing bass clarity that I've only heard on other speakers that have had higher end crossover components in them. I cannot wait to get the ELAC Unify reference and the BRX up here and do a little bit of a speaker comparison one after the other. As it sits, I think these are fantastic. If you're wanting a very analytical, hearing every last bit of detail in the top end, the Buchardt S400 Mark II is probably not for you. But if I had these as my personal speaker, I'd be completely happy. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we have Patreon-only Zooms, and we have a Patreon-only Facebook group, and we have a Patreon-only Discord server, and certain tiers of patrons get giveaways each month. You can also, well, this isn't an affiliate link. Most of the links in my description are affiliate links, which means if you click and you buy something, I will get a commission. You can also sign up for Amazon Music or Tidal. Links in the description. Click on the link, sign up. Even if it's only for a trial and you quit, I still get a couple of bucks. You can also use the thanks button below the video, right next to the share button. There's a little thanks. You can give me a buck or two if you got any value out of this video. So, don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen maybe through your new Buchardt S400 Mark II and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.